hand. He sat at the dining-room table beneath the small chandelier, a soft glow filling the room. Had the butler brought this letter to him? Yes, he could vaguely recall the starched old man walking in with a salver. The writing was neat, almost too neat. Had he ever seen such a neat hand in his life? Words jumped from the page, tangling together in his lopsided vision. Jack blinked hard, trying to clear his sight before attempting to read again. He clamped his lips around the rim of the bottle in his other hand, throwing his head back for yet another gulp of brandy. When his eyes managed to focus, he read the first line, Mrs. Irwin. A deep chuckle rumbled through his chest. Why exactly he was laughing he could not entirely say. All he knew was that he was most certainly not Mrs. Irwin. He had let her manor Benham Abbey, but from what he had gathered about the woman, she was not one to receive letters, or visitors for that matter. Ever. And if she did, she likely would have driven them out with her cane, or even with a sword and pistol. His laughter continued to rumble through his chest without his consent. He continued reading down the page, his eyes focusing on the name of the poor girl requesting to live with Mrs. Irwin. Louisa Rosemeyer. What a hopeless young thing. She sounded entirely too desperate. Was she a young woman? Or a spinster? How could he know? At any rate, she must have been very desperate indeed to be soliciting a request to live with Mrs. Irwin, even if she did happen to be the woman's great-niece. Jack rubbed his jaw, pausing to swallow what remained in his bottle. The room spun, adding to his delirium. It wasn't kind to laugh at the misfortunes of others, but it was serving well to distract him from his own. He bunched the letter up in his hand, pushing away from the table and taking unsteady steps toward the door. "May I assist you to your room, Master Warwick?" Jack ignored the offer, not even looking to see where the voice had come from. He couldn't make it to his blasted room on his own. He was not a child any longer. He stumbled over the first step of the staircase, landing on his outstretched hands. He recovered, picking up the letter that had fallen with him, taking hold of the banister with his other hand. When he finally made it to his bedchamber, he sat down heavily in the chair at his writing desk. Parchment. Quill. Where the devil was the ink? He gathered together his supplies, the strange urge to laugh still hovering in his throat. His head pounded as he thought over what to say, struggling to create sentences in his muddled mind. Miss Louisa was fortunate that her letter had fallen into his hands instead. If Mrs. Irwin had received it, she wouldn't have hesitated to turn the girl away. Jack would make certain she was invited, and once she arrived, Mrs. Irwin would be forced to contend with the situation. He would pay a great deal of money to see that. His chuckling resumed as he scrawled on the parchment, "Dear Miss Louisa, do come to Benham Abbey as soon as you wish. I will be most eagerly anticipating your arrival. Sincerely, Mrs. Irwin." He looked over the incredibly short correspondence, his head aching too much to write more. It would be quite exciting to rattle Mrs. Irwin. The entire town would thank him for doing so. That unpleasant woman would finally have to consider caring for someone other than herself. If Miss Louisa travelled so far, Jack doubted Mrs. Irwin would send her back to where she came from. Where had she come from? He glanced at the address and copied it down, sealing the letter and preparing it to be posted in the morning. If he left it on the edge of his desk, it would be carried off before he...